Hey, it's Miss Chronic Chronicles. Are you there, my dear?
I,
Uh-oh. There she is.
hey, it's Minnie, and you're listening to the Mary and Joe Show. So, Mary, can I be blunt?
Yes, welcome to the podcast, my dear friend. Minnie, I'm so glad to have you here. We have so much to talk about today. It's a very important episode, I would say, for crossing of the borders in a sense, if you may. We're taking a little drive from Utah over to Colorado, having a little chat. And I must give you the floor here. Please introduce yourself to what are you about? What would in a summary would Minnie be to this community of listeners here?
Well, I am a mother. I am a friend. I bake a lot of cakes. And
Oh
in
yeah.
this episode, I am an advocate first and foremost.
And I'm so proud to have you here because not only are we going to be talking about deep topics, uncomfortable things. I honestly should have put a trigger warning on this screen, but there's snowflakes out there everywhere and even warm places. But yes. So let's put it like this. What let's go from the beginning. Minnie, what year were you born? And what astrology sign are you? Where
I'm
do
a
you live?
I am a Libra. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. Um, you asked another question, and
What's year were you born?
1994. Yeah, 94.
94. I think you're the youngest guest at this point, my friend. That's pretty phenomenal. So you have a different perspective, which the listeners, I'm sure a lot of them can appreciate. So welcome on that one. And my Libra friend, I am so happy to know another. I think there's three now. We have, no, four. You're number four in the whole podcast.
Woo!
Yay, our Libra crew. So, have you always lived in Utah?
Not always.
Oh,
I was
really?
born, yeah, I was born here. I lived here till I was 5 or 6. I don't know. I lived in Washington. I lived in Tacoma, Washington
Oh
for a
my
few years.
goodness. Which
Yeah,
part?
Tacoma.
Tacoma. Oh my goodness. I don't know Tacoma that well, but
It's just outside of Seattle.
oh, okay.
It's pretty big. Like, so when if you were to fly into Tacoma, you'd go to the SeaTac Airport, Seattle Tacoma area.
Well, we have like four different previous guests that are from Washington, so I'm sure a lot of shout outs are happening right now when we have the premiere.
It's
I
where my heart is.
honestly,
It's my home.
I mean, do you go back often?
I haven't been back in 12 years. Oh no, I'm older than
Oh
that
my
now.
goodness.
I haven't been back in a while. I believe I'm going back next year. My best friend, we've been best friends
Uh-huh.
since we were 5 and 6. Uh,
That's
she's getting
awesome.
married next year, and so I am going out. I'm the maid of honor. I'll be out there doing that with her.
Please excuse the background noise. A trash truck decided to just screw up the podcast, but here
And
we
you're good.
are.
I can't hear it, but
Oh,
I
good,
have
good.
kids that
I'm
could
very
start
glad to hear that.
screaming. So
Good, good. Well, so Washington, Utah, um, let's see. And in regards to your actual history in Utah, so all of what year was it that you actually moved to Utah again?
well, I was born here, and then I came back.
Oh,
I would have been a pretty young kid, but so I was probably 9 when I came back.
okay, so
8 or 9.
elementary school.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so and what found yourself as a mother and as an activist, and I'll say just somebody, were you in somebody in as a in high school and middle school, were you already involved with deeper topics, or has this been more of something after you became a mother?
Um, I I didn't. I was kind of a shit show as a kid. Um,
Hey, paint a picture. The listeners are listening.
right. I did not get it together actually, and
Uh-huh.
I don't think I would have it together without my sweet, supportive, kind, loving husband. He really, really helped pull me together as a human being in the world.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I I got sick when I was 19.
Okay. What
Um,
happened?
I got C. diff for the first time.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
And for people who do not understand what C. diff is, please do share. I have some history with it too, but please do
it
share.
is a it is an illness that affects. Um, let me kind of. It is it's a bacteria that causes diarrhea, and it can cause like really bad colitis, which is just inflammation in the colon. If you don't know what that is. Um, Let me pull up my stats here. It is like an estimated 500,000 Americans, including 17,000 children, get C. diff annually, and at least 29,000 Americans die after being infected. And I want to touch on this really quick. The reason these are estimated numbers is because C. diff is not a nationally notifiable disease.
It's tragic. That's a
Um,
secret epidemic if you really look at it.
it is. It is like a silent epidemic. It is a huge
Mm-hmm.
deal. We do know that reported cases of hospital onset C. diff have declined.
Uh-huh. Uh-oh, I don't think we can hear you. Are you
Oh,
there?
I'm
Oh,
here.
now I
You
can
got
hear
me?
you. So sorry.
I didn't know. You're good. It just timed out. It must have, because I have
How
my
rude.
other sheet open.
No problem. It said you were saying it's a silent epidemic and then it timed out.
Okay, it's a silent epidemic. Like it really is, and these numbers, because they're not mandated to be reported, so we only have estimates.
Terrifying.
It is. It's really terrifying, especially when you consider like they're not doctors aren't looking for people that aren't in higher risk categories for it, because we don't actually talk about how often it happens. So if you're under 65 or haven't recently been in a hospital or haven't recently been on antibiotics,
Yeah.
they're not even going to be looking at it until it's pretty bad.
So it's
Um,
just spreading.
yeah, and we're seeing a decrease in hospital numbers for hospital acquired infections, that is, we're seeing an increase in community acquired infections. And so it's not that this disease is getting better and we're seeing less cases because we've been able to manage it in hospitals. It's that we don't have accurate, well, one, that we don't have accurate reporting. We need it to be a nationally notifiable disease. And two, yes, I like to use sorry, I keep getting so sidetracked here.
You're totally doing fine. And listen, guys, this is her first podcast. Am I right?
It is. I
Well,
also,
technically, second. You were on a prior one, never got released, but
well, yes,
hey.
that's true.
I'll share how we got to know each other in a little bit. They'll have to sit around and enjoy this. Educational, because this is exactly what it's about. Really sharing the knowledge that unfortunately you've had to experience painfully. And myself too. I had it while I was pregnant. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But please you're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing wonderful.
The second point I was going to make there. So one, it's that we don't have accurate reporting on this. And two, even though we're seeing a decrease in the hospital acquired infections, we're seeing an increase in the community acquired infections. So it is being offset a little bit there.
It's a struggle, obviously, for them to really figure out like a proper, well, this is why we're here today. What happens with C. diff that ends up really making it why you're so passionate? I'm not going to speak for you.
What is it about C. diff? There's a lot. It is, so for me, I have had it recurrently every few years. Anytime I take a major antibiotic, I get it, and I I've changed my diet. I take probiotics. I do everything I can to try and avoid it. But I know that for me, it's not an if I get it again, it's a when. And
Ugh.
what am I going to do? And am I going to make it out this next time?
And what were your symptoms, if you feel comfortable sharing? Because obviously not everybody gets the same, and some are probably more almost like flares, right? Some get more exacerbated than others.
Um, well, kind of. So if I've been sick with C. diff recently, I would say within the last 2 years, a lot of other things come into play, like
Right.
chronic pain,
Hmm.
um, sporadic vomiting, stuff like that. If I am more than 2 years outside of an infection, which has only
Hmm.
happened once, I do have a lasting illness that has been caused or at least triggered by
Hmm.
my uh, incessant C. diff. We'll call it incessant C. diff.
And
That's
it's
fun.
immune system lowering. That's the major
Yeah,
reality of
it
it. And
lowers your
then,
immune system, and you can go septic. You think
right.
this disease is causing massive inflammation and spewing toxins into your body, and so you really can just go septic. I am
Isn't it basically a bacterial parasite if we look at it, like how it really affects the body? It's like no matter what nutrition you give, it steals it. Isn't am I correct?
It is. Um, I don't actually know on that at this
I thought
moment.
that's how it
I'm
was
sure that
described to me because when I
I'm
was
sh-
pregnant, they were like, your baby is suffering if we don't
yes,
either
that would
deliver
be
you
true.
soon, which is what we did, or
Yes.
put you on the highest antibiotic that makes you almost nuclear. And we're going to be wearing hazmat suits, which is what happened. And we're not sure how you got it, but you're dangerous to us, is exactly how it was described to me. That's my knowledge right there in a handbook.
Um, so we know
Ridiculous.
that it is usually hospital acquired. I would say, especially if you're, going through that,
Right.
you likely got it at the hospital.
Probably because I went to the hospital so many times hemorrhaging while I was pregnant, and that's probably how
Yeah,
I got it. Honestly, there you go. High five.
yeah,
Bullshit.
I would guess that that is probably it. And
It's
I
sad.
can't
And
dive.
there's the point we're making right here that it's a very big problem, and even the hospitals aren't looking for it unless needed to, right? Or is that just an insurance issue too? Are we going at
It's
that
an
level
insurance
with C. diff?
issue with insurance. So insurance actually, hospitals get lower rates
Uh-huh.
if they report the cases that are hospital. Like if you're at the hospital and they
Yeah.
diagnose it there, then you're likely to um, that those numbers are reported because it goes back to Medicaid, Medicare, and they get
Okay.
discounts from the state for reporting those numbers.
Right.
But it's not mandatory. So if I go into the hospital diagnoses it as C. diff, then they're going to report that number. But if I go to
Hmm.
my primary care physician and
It's
he reports it
private.
as C. diff, exactly, it's private. It's not
Oh
mandated to
my
be reported.
goodness.
And
Wow, you're
so that
making me
when I'm
really
talking about those,
interested. We need to
yeah,
put
when I'm
arm
talking
in
about those,
arm on this and go to the Senate about it. What the heck is going on?
yeah. So one ask is to say, hey, we need C. diff to be made a nationally notifiable disease. We did with our lobbying last year. Congress did recognize um, that it is a public health imperative. And for the fiscal year of 2023, this year, um, the House of Labor, Health and Human Services and Appropriations report urged CDC and state local governments to make more significant investments in C. diff data collection and surveillance, and to help improve antibiotic stewardship, which leads into my next piece here.
Please.
Um, Antibiotic stewardship is advocating for better use of antibiotics, which is less use of antibiotics, less intervention. Um, uh, One thing to think about is if you have to go take an antibiotic, you want to be absolutely sure that you need that antibiotic and
Hmm.
that you are on the lowest dose for the shortest amount of time. Um,
Interesting.
because how we get C. diff is antibiotics come in and they clean you out. They clean out your good bacteria, they clean out your bad bacteria. And so while whatever was hurting you is now gone, so is everything else that was keeping you safe. You need to think of your microbiome in your gut like that. It is super important. You don't want to mess with it.
So I have to point my nose out real quick, and we're going to be touching on this. Having gastroparesis myself, and then being diagnosed with C. diff later, and I know you have some similarities to that circumstance, would you agree that like that disease we end up getting, which is gastroparesis, whether you had it before or after, work hand in hand to make your body go to shit? I don't know how else to say that. What
I
would
think that
you...
everything in the body is definitely connected.
Because I'm antibiotic resistant.
Yes, as
Personally.
most people are. That's part of what the Pasteur Act that we'll talk about in a minute, that's part
Okay.
of what we're trying to work on with that.
Right.
We don't have very many antibiotics. They're all broad spectrum. What we need is more targeted, narrow spectrum antibiotics for specific illnesses. And so the Pasteur Act would create a kind of subscription service that the government could use to develop and use and store large amounts of narrow spectrum antibiotics. And
So
I
is
wish
the
I could.
research being done currently, but the funding is not available currently? Is that
No,
why the act
this would
needs
be
to
funding
happen?
for that research. We want to fund the research and development of new antibiotics that are more targeted so that we're
And
less
this
likely to
act would help
develop
that
these super
happen.
bugs. Yeah,
And what
this is
exact act is it again? If you could
the
tell the listeners.
Pasteur Act,
Okay.
Pasteur. If you just want to pull that up, actually pull up like a
Actually
summary of
can't
it.
bring it up, but
Oh
I can bring it
no.
up on the website. Let me bring it up there. Yes.
That is really, contact your
Thank you.
representatives, tell them to make C. diff a nationally notifiable disease, tell them to say yes to the Pasteur Act. It would be life-changing for everyone and for
Is
society.
it of 2021? Because I don't see 2023. Let me see if I can find that.
It is being reintroduced
Okay,
this
I see
year.
it now. Let me...
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait a second. Is this in Colorado that they're trying to do it?
It's national.
Okay, so I found one in Colorado. I'll present, and then I'll bring the other one up real quick. It's very interesting. Colorado is very
Forward thinking.
yeah. And this was April 27th. They just did it. So Washington, I will include this link for you listeners. Because of copyright issues, we can't read, and we wouldn't even do that. But you can take it to yourself. But in regards to what you were describing, I see this has been going on for a long time. Okay, here we
Yes.
go.
I have been an
Fabulous.
advocate since 2017. Spoke with my senators and representatives every year since then, asking them to help us out with this. So if everyone just can please contact your representatives, tell them, vote for the Pasteur Act, say yes, it's worth it. Send them a little email. And then to make C. diff a nationally notifiable disease.
And so all of the 50 states are actually putting it together right now. Is that... Here it is.
It's going to be in a Congress.
237 organizations. Let's see. I will be including all the links that I can for this for you guys, for your listeners and your watchers. So let's see here. Yeah, it is Colorado as well. That's interesting.
And to touch back on what you were
Pennsylvania,
saying,
Georgia, and what is the other one? I think Colorado. Please. So sorry.
oh, you're good. So you were saying, like, are these intertwined, right?
Yes.
And while I am not a doctor, I can't diagnose, I can't treat, I can give my opinion here from my personal experience, which is I think that everything in your body is connected. And so if you have gastroparesis and your body is not digesting something, then you're not going to get all the nutrients you need from it, which will knock your microbiome off, which makes you a little more susceptible to anything.
See, and I was given antibiotics when I was like 6 years old for everything,
Right.
and as much as
All of us
long as
were.
possible. And I was born in 85. You were born in again, what year?
94.
There you
But it
go.
was still,
10-year
and
difference, lady.
it's a problem
Less.
to this day. It's a problem
Hmm.
to this day
Yes.
that if there's a problem, people tend to stick antibiotics on it and say, hope it works.
And I hate to put it like this, and not for the controversy of the topic. It's just a personal reservation as sorts. You know, call it as so. I'm really not for antibiotics, and I'm really not for flu shots. That's just, I mean, vaccines, I'm really even limited on that. But I think on ultimate, but that it's everybody's opinion, you know,
Yeah.
or their own experience. But when it comes to someone who has a life of now 15 years of GI problems, not being able to eat right, having strep, as you saw me, I mean, you even spoke to me, I
Yeah.
believe. That was scary. I think that long term, that experience of all the different antibiotics I took, including a Z-Pap that almost brought me, actually, it did bring me to the hospital. So I had such a bad reaction to it. It was hard to breathe. I almost blacked out. I don't even know how to explain it to you. I had to go to the hospital. So, and the Z-Pack did nothing for me. This is like a month into we think you have strep, maybe you have COVID. So, and all the people that have now been treated with the retrovirals, I wonder how is that going to work out long term with these cocktails of antibiotics again. So, could you elaborate a little bit maybe on, I don't know, just your experience with gastroparesis itself, and maybe also what has been your journey in this nightmare, because you know exactly what it feels like to be treated when you can't be treated. I've asked for liquid antibiotics because I've read that's the only thing that people like us can actually take, and it's not even great. But if it's necessary, like you have a huge infection, then you need a liquid, and that your insurance will not pay for that. So you almost have to sign off for it. It's crazy.
Um, so with C. diff, it's any antibiotic can make you sick. Um, and that's again, it really comes down to your microbiome. And so I always recommend, like, I feel better that if I take a probiotic with my antibiotics, it does not guarantee that I'm going to be safe from getting sick again. But it does, you know how you just feel kind of sick to your stomach when you're taking antibiotics? Like often it feels just,
Right.
yeah. And so I recommend taking a probiotic because it helps me. Um, it helps me feel better. And I think I am just personally maybe super susceptible to C. diff myself.
Right.
Um,
How do you feel about milk products? Because since I've had a whole plethora of problems, and as going back as far as when I was pregnant and had C. diff, I'll say once I stopped drinking milk, and I do eat cheese still, but milk itself I don't anymore. I feel like I must have been giving myself so many hormones. So many hormones.
I am not gonna
There
lie.
was no rest period of the pain I went through back
I
then.
am hot and cold with milk. When I am really sick, I won't touch it.
Okay.
But I love milk. I am a milk girl. I will drink full glasses of milk just because it
I miss those days, but
tastes so good.
what you said about inflammation is a real
Yes,
thing.
that
It is
inflammation
not,
is
it's
really
not a
painful.
separate condition. It goes hand in hand with how your GI does not give you food, then you don't even think clearly.
Yeah.
You don't everything.
My gastroenterologist at one point he told me, and this is in a broader picture, not a very diagnostic thing, right? He said, honestly, we just know about as much about our guts, about our microbiomes as we know about the ocean. And
It's a
so
travesty. That statement is a
That's
travesty of
life.
a
That is
professional.
life.
Yes, but on some real shit, like when you go to seek help, and like you said, there's a lot of I'm sure the doctors are aware of the condition, but again, like you said, to be tuning in on that, it's it comes down to it's to make money for one thing. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, that's what they're it's pharmaceutical companies go hand in hand. Do you
I
think
think
that that's the push?
I
Or is it on education? That's my question. I'm
I
trying to
think
be fair.
I think education. I think our bigger push here is education. Because if doctors know, hey, prescribing antibiotics unnecessarily or as a preventative measure to my patients can make them so sick, then they're less likely to do that. No doctor is out there trying to push antibiotics on someone who doesn't need it if they know that it's going to make them worse. At
So
least no doctor worth their salt.
you're in a large city. Can I say that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm
I'm
in
in a
Salt Lake.
rural ass city. You've seen
You
it.
are. I love it. I love it out there. I love it.
And I think I'm gonna like just dabble on this real quick. When I have went to the emergency room in bigger cities, yes, they know what gastroparesis is. But when
Yeah.
I go to even my local little, not talking about hole in the wall, um,
Your hospital. You go to your hospital and they don't know.
just any, they don't, you have to explain it when I'm like, please don't prescribe me that because I probably won't keep it down. And then they say, oh, I'll write you some Zofran. I'm like, haha, you're
Right.
cute. I don't
Right.
feel like throwing up a pill too, because I do. So I have to use cannabis, so I'm in a state that's safe access. We've met each other through the period of time when safe access became available in your state. So, in regards to education with your doctors, even in a large state, I'm scared to ask the question, but have you had to educate your doctors about any of the things you've learned through this C. diff and gastroparesis journey?
Yes.
Oh,
Um,
please share, and I'll shut up. But oh, geez.
you are your own strongest advocate. You are always your own strongest advocate. Um, because you know what you're experiencing and your needs. Um, it can be hard to advocate for yourself when you are so sick that you really feel like you're going to die. Like, to put it into a context frame,
Good words. It's truth.
I, at my biggest point, was big. And I lost 150 pounds. Um, over 150 pounds. I dropped down to 95 pounds at my
Ah,
lowest. And they were telling me like I was going to need a feeding tube if I, like a nasal feeding tube if I didn't stop losing weight. And I had been
right.
asked by my doctor at that point, I am a medical cannabis patient. I had been asked by my doctor at that point to stop using cannabis just to rule out like
Oh, no,
that it
wait,
wasn't the
wait.
cannabis making me
Hold
so sick.
on. Yeah. Oh, my dear Minnie.
And
Oh,
so
my
I
dear
did my
friend.
best. For some reason, my body wasn't processing it. So even though I had lost all that weight, right? Um, I was still waiting for an FMT at this point, a fecal microbiome transplant
Okay.
or fecal matter transplant. Uh, I kind of interchange those
Where they
because
put the good bacteria in.
into you, yes, they give you
Okay.
the
I,
microbiome back.
I have to touch on this real quick because I'm actually blown away and I'm kind of sad because are you telling me in Utah they went with what Louisiana and Florida and all these other fucked up states? No offense to Utah, but I have to say it. Are you telling me that they tried to make it make sense that you were making yourself sick with the
Yeah,
medicine?
with cannabis.
Oh, girl, I've seen it. Wait a second. Did you admit in the ER that you were using cannabis, or did you wait till they'd take your blood? Like, how? What were the
I
politics there? I
so
have to ask
I
that because that's real.
I work really closely with my gastroenterologist, and I
Okay.
this is the reason I don't think that it was him. I think it was insurance.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Utah. I'm shaking my head. All
I
right.
don't think it's a
Okay.
Utah thing. I had really, really top of the line insurance at the time. I
Okay.
wonder if it's a standard procedure that if you're vomiting for X amount of time, and you're using cannabis even medically, that
Yeah,
they
because
need
they
to rule it out.
claim there is
Some
something that
people,
happens.
yes, some people do actually get cannabinoid hyperemesis. I've seen it. It's a cyclical vomiting that
You
happens
got to
from
change up how you're freaking smoking. Stop using concentrates. Think
it's
about it. It's
it's
toxic.
taking a break,
Take
right?
a
Like
break. Yep.
you need to
Use
everything
edibles.
everything in
I love this.
moderation. And
Oh,
I would wait if you've used so much cannabis that your body is recognizing it as toxic, like
that's usually an edible. That will happen. You're supposed to take breaks with that kind of stuff. You're supposed to take breaks with everything.
everything. You're
You're
supposed to take
not
breaks with
supposed to
everything.
eat carrot cake every day of your life or
No, but I
pizza.
would.
Like for real, like on some metaphorical senses here. Your body needs, we're humans. We are
Yeah,
not gasoline gulsing machines. I don't know how else to put that.
yeah.
I'm
I
actually blown away. And I'm sorry to put so much emphasis, but see, I have listeners who have probably been told this themselves, like you explained it. I didn't know the term of it, but I do know about it because I only had one doctor say that to me, squint his eyes a little and send out the test for the stomach emptying. And then when he got the results back, he like almost hugged me. He's like, I'm so sorry. I am here. What do we need to do? And just
yeah,
let me put in your records how much you're smoking so we can like track this shit. See what's working. I had a doctor who cared and he wasn't going to use it against me. So that's just California. That was a California experience. So
yeah.
I'm just blown away. Your doctors are so,
I
anyway,
think part
especially
of
the
it was
GI
that I was
doctor.
at a critical point, right? Like at the point that
Right.
you're looking at feeding intervention.
Yeah.
Um,
I had the same things.
and I
Feeding tube by the
continued
time I was
losing weight.
24. Didn't
To
get it
be
though.
to his credit, he did not ask me to drug test until I continued losing weight after the FMT.
Interesting.
Um, but I knew in my heart after 60 days and I still wasn't popping clean on my home tests.
Right.
I knew if I continue on like this, I'm going to like be in really big trouble. And so I did pick up back to my medical cannabis use and I had gained
Mhm.
15 pounds within 2 weeks.
Okay, so let me ask you in a really more less scientific and a more personal experience because you are gastroparesis diagnosed, right?
Yes.
Or is it an assumption?
No, it was diagnosed. I did the gastric emptying study.
How long did your stomach emptying take?
We just did a 4 hour look
Oh,
and I
wow.
still had like over 50% of the food left in
When?
my stomach after
About
the
how
4 hours.
long? What time?
I still had over 50% of the food left in my stomach after the 4 hours.
Oh, Lord, lady.
Yeah.
They turned my screen off after 2. They said they just turned it off. It was like a late day. He's like, I'm going home. Seriously. He said it didn't
Yeah.
move at all from the upper part of my esophagus. It didn't move at all. So for me, when I smoke, and I'm just doing this a more personal level, and this will be hashtag gastroparesis, I mean, it's painful. I have pain right now as we're talking and I'm smoking, and I'm better because if I did just have the pain, I wouldn't want to be here. And that's how bad it is. For me, I vomit sometimes 3, 4 times a day. Go to the bathroom, TMI, trigger warning, leave the room, get your kids out. Straight up, I go to the bathroom regularly between 9 to 11 times every single day. That's why these podcasts don't start early. That's crazy. Would you like to join me in my bathroom? No, I don't think so. It's
Yeah.
a little gastroparesis humor, but I mean, what do you experience with your this is not
When
it's
I'm
a
talking
joy and
about,
a pleasure and it's a sad reality to know that you also suffer on some
well,
real.
yeah, it's good to not be alone, right? Like,
Right.
misery loves company. So,
Yeah, but between what let me here's my question. It's a two-parter. What is it that you experience with your gastroparesis and what do you feel instantly in relief? With me, instant relief is within 8 minutes I'm not going to throw up even if I was gonna, if I'm smoking even a little bowl.
um, so what I experience is more of a, when we talk about flares, I
Yes.
experience those big flares. For sometimes I'll be fine, I'll be good, and I can um almost even eat regularly. During these flares, I experience a lot of nausea, diarrhea,
Yep.
um, and for me, instant relief looks like maybe I'm vomiting less in a day than
Amen.
I would.
Yep.
Uh, I don't know that I've had any instant relief except like at the very worst there when I went from 95 pounds. Um, and I was finally able to hold down my meal for the first time in 6 weeks.
I know
Like,
exactly that. I have pictures to show, and I have personally seen you fluctuate too.
yeah,
And the reason I love your soul, my dear friend Minnie, is that from person to person, it's life's too effing short. You got to have the things that make you happy, the music you love, the people that keep you sincere. And when you're in pain, I don't know how many people you can talk openly, and I'm sure that you now, how long have you been suffering with this gastroparesis? As since 19 technically,
no.
or how
So
long?
okay, so my first incidence of C. diff, I was almost 20
Okay.
when I got diagnosed. And we didn't know what to do, so it took 8 or 9 months to diagnose it at first. I might have been 20 when I first got the full diagnosis. I know it was before I got married. Um, and we did rounds and rounds of vancomycin and Flagyl, and
Mhm.
they had just come out with Difficid, which is a targeted antibiotic designed for C. diff.
Okay.
Um, and Difficid, that first round, got me. We were good. It had my back, and I got better fast with one treatment of Difficid. Um, and I thought, hey, maybe that was it for me, right? But then I had 3 recurrences that year.
Oh,
And by the third recurrence, it was pretty clear that nothing was helping. I was getting worse. And so we did my first FMT. And that was just before I got married. So it would have been 19 when I first got diagnosed. And then,
and for the listeners who
yeah.
don't understand, what is an FMT again?
So they take stool from someone else. They clean it to the best of their ability that you can clean poop. And they test it to make sure that you're hopefully not going to get diseases, right?
Right.
And then they take that person's poop and they give it to you. It's done in many different ways. It can be done in like a colonoscopy setting. It can be done through an NG tube, which is a tube that goes down your nose into your stomach. And it can be done through pills or
Mm-hmm.
little capsules, And mine every time has been done through a colonoscopy. Um, and it's saved my life 3 times. So, you look, okay,
Right.
over the last 9 years, it'll be 10 years next year. I have had 3 fecal matter transplants, and um, they only do those when you're having recurrences or a persistent infection that won't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they have to know that you're not going to get better on your own or with any antibiotics before they're willing to do this, because it is not an FDA approved treatment, and there are risks involved.
Right. So you give a lot of consent
Yeah, you
at
give a
that
lot of
point.
consent.
Yeah.
And like the people have died from getting them. We know that.
So is
So
Utah just ahead of that kind of
no, this
medical
is a
research?
nationwide thing. And for a while there was only, and maybe it still is this way. I know that for a long time the only doctor that could perform it here, there was 2 doctors, one in Salt Lake and one in Southern Utah, and people would come from miles around to get the FMTs because there was only 2 people that could perform them here.
Wow.
Um,
Specialized and willing to take the risk.
yeah,
I see that.
yeah, and yeah. So, and then the most recent one, I waited. I was sick for a year during COVID with my most recent infection, and they weren't going to give it to me. Nobody would do it. There is only one hospital in the state that would even perform it. They would even allow it to be performed on their premises.
Right.
Um, Only one doctor willing to even do it, and no one willing to provide the stool matter. Open Biome, the only company that was doing it, was not shipping at the time because they couldn't test for COVID in stool samples.
Right. Right. There wasn't even a testing at that point, I'm sure.
So it was that they would send it if you were going to die anyway.
Right.
Um, and I finally got there, but they weren't responding to me, or they were responding and they were declining it anyway. And if it weren't for my advocacy work, I don't know that they ever would have
Right.
helped me out, but they did. They came through at the last minute and it saved my life. It literally saved my life. We knew I had been asked to fill out my living will and my, yeah, I had
Right.
been asked to fill out that end of life paperwork. I never did
Mhm.
that. I was not ready. I never did that.
You're a happy mama and a happy wife. There's no way you're giving up. That's the one thing I
Yes,
know about you.
I went on and after this most recent infection, I got my shit together. And
You
I
were in
was
a deep
able,
depression, hun. I
I,
remember that. No
it
offense.
was
I'm calling it
bad.
out. It was
Yeah, no, it was
horrible.
bad. And I, I now I have my second and final beautiful miracle baby,
Right.
and I am in the best place I've been in my whole life. I,
You radiate. That's why I reached out to this beautiful friend. I said I was going to tell you guys. I'm going to segue to it just for a split second. We met each other through another content creator. I'll put their information below in the description and give a little heart. Otherwise, I had her show up at my door and see my grow and all my. Do you remember the grow? Do you really remember it?
I do. Yeah, it was
You
really
remember the
great.
big trees? I don't remember if it was
Yeah,
the trees. Were they
I don't
out?
think
Did you get to walk through the garden?
I did a little bit.
I think they were little,
I think they were little. Yeah, I'm thinking they were little.
but you did watch the freaking silly go on for a long time. I've been an advocate for a long time myself, but it more so with gastroparesis and chronic illness and anxiety and things like that. And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but it's one of those things where even it's like if you're diagnosed with bipolar, you just don't want to believe it, you know? Like maybe there's something else, you know? And so it's funny that you even bring up the correlation with gastroparesis and C. diff that can cause the inflammation issues, because who knows if the horse came before the cart or the cart came before the horse, if you get my drift. So,
Yeah.
and chronic illness, I've believed a long time. If your immune system's attacked, I had hep C for a long, long time. So my body was on all kinds of different treatments and antibiotics because the medication, I used to get strep regularly. It's amazing I didn't when I was a child have my tonsils out then, but I think I got mono, and I don't think it was from like, the fun things. I think it was just bacteria, whatever the hell, when I was like 13. So my immune system kept being attacked. So it's funny as you describe your own circumstances, as I'm sure other listeners can relate in some ways. There's like, it's like you said, an ebb and flow. For me, age now and having chronic illness is hard. I know age in general is whatever, but inflammation on top of age now sucks.
Yeah.
And momming, you know what I mean? You understand picking children up and things like that. I have a 7-year old now, but how does, if you feel you want to elaborate at all, being a mother with chronic illness, how does that compute in your life? How do you make things better in your life?
Um, it's hard. It can, yeah.
You're a constant warrior for yourself and for your children and for your husband. So, I mean,
Um,
what would you suggest for listeners? What works for you? It doesn't have to be the same, but like, what would you say? Not just for, as you said, contacting the representatives and telling them to vote, but
what do I do personally to help myself?
Yeah, your own mental health, physical, your
Um,
spiritual bubble.
the only advice I have, because I had to come to terms with the fact that things may get better for a little while and they may not. Um, sometimes it goes for so long, like years, and you have to say, what do I do if I don't get better?
Yes.
And the only advice I have is that you tell yourself, you gaslight yourself, you say, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's a mind over matter. If
You
your
avoid the
choices,
doctor unless it's bad now.
I do, I avoid the doctor unless
Oh,
it is bad. Because they're not going to help me.
do
They
you
want
ever
to.
have the PTSD that comes involved being told new diagnosis and given what's the word? Fairy dust in their pocket? Yeah, it's just bullshit. Nothing works out. Do you have
Absolutely.
that PTSD?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more likely to do research medicine now than I
Yes.
am to do traditional medicine, because there may be like in traditional medicine, we've done the testing. We know I don't have anything that they can help with at this point, right?
Yep.
But in research medicine, maybe something helps. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
um, and maybe if that helps me, then maybe it helps someone else.
Right.
Um, and so, I mean, if you want to feel like you're doing something, advocate. If you want to, or sign up for a research study that helps you.
Right.
Um, take control of your mental health is my
Mm-hmm.
biggest advice. Because if you can't take control of your mental health, nothing will get better.
You got to have the will to want to fight, and
Exactly. Well,
even
you
to
gotta fight for
accept
your
it,
right
the
to
will to
party.
accept it.
If you're not fighting for your right to party, then your body's gonna party without you in a way you don't want it
Oh, say it again. Say it again. Mary, can it be blunt?
to. Very can I be blunt?
I
But
appreciate you. No, seriously, on some real, like, that statement right there is so powerful because okay, it's defeating in one hand, and also we have a lot of friends in common, and even my own circumstances, who have to apply for disability or
yeah,
become in a circumstance where they're maxed out to answers, and doctors don't even want to play anymore, and they're like, there's no I remember the first beginning of my road to all of my health problems, and you have your own memory, I'm sure. It probably was like 7 doctor's appointments in, you're like, oh shit, this is bad. But at first you went in, you're like, we're going to fix this today.
yeah, exactly.
That's that's why a lot of people decide to mirror their own experiences. This is why the Mary and Joe show exists, because, like, quite literally, I've had gastroparesis now for almost 14 years. And that's a long time. And the first 7 years of that 14 years, they told me I had anxiety, and I was like, yep. Okay, but we're talking about my gut. No, it's not causing. Okay. So give me 7 years to fuck with my head when it was my real body.
We don't
And
actually.
minus the nutrition that I actually should have been having. You subtract, divide, and equate the fucking equation of what happens being ill so long and just wanting answers. So I personally think what you've done so well for a long time, just by, I remember when you called me during the pandemic, like you said, how are you? You found community in a real way that made sense for you. Wouldn't you suggest, like, Googling their area for maybe if they're also suffering in, I mean, gastroparesis community is small because most of them are online. You have to advocate for yourself. And not all of them believe in cannabis. And pretty much most of them who have tried so long still drank, did other things to just say, fuck it. And then their body at that point ended up with a feeding tube, or they had other issues like colitis, colitis and Crohn's disease and whatnot, who have ended up with their colostomy bags and feeding tubes. Are you still threatened by a feeding tube in your life right now?
Right now, no, I'm not. And I want to just also touch back on when I say it's
Please.
mind over matter. When I say it's
Yes.
mind over matter, it's really just choices, right? I'm going to wake up. I'm going to be sick. Am I going to choose to go about my day to the best of my ability being sick, even though it might mean throwing up at the zoo, it might mean throwing up in the parking lot, it
Right.
will mean people looking at me and judging me, not knowing my situation.
Not caring about what people think is the first step to
Exactly.
that
It's a
whole
radical
thing.
acceptance piece,
Oh,
is what
I
it is.
don't pluck my eyebrows as often as I used to before my stomach problems. I care to
Right.
just get outside the house. Like you said, throwing up is such a real thing. Like,
Right. And so for me personally, and I understand some days are just too much to even get out of bed. I have
right.
been there, I
And
have
that's when,
lived that.
yes.
For
So
me, I
sorry.
will choose to be sick in public every time because that means that my kids are out there doing what they need to be doing. What is good for them.
Hmm.
Um,
Adjust how you are if you're a gastroparesis patient. Don't eat out while you're
right.
there.
No,
Uh,
bring
baby your
bring meal
body. It's
shakes with
okay.
you. Always, always, always drink water. If you think you're drinking enough water, you're probably not. Drink more.
Right.
Like, and find what helps your little nausea here and there. Like for me, sucking on a Jolly Rancher helps my nausea more than a Zofran would.
Oh, LaCroix, any bubble water with no real flavor. That is a miracle. That's
Yeah,
my liquid cannabis, folks.
exactly. Everybody has to find what is going to work for them. What is, because if you're chronically ill, you wake up every single day and you know
Yep.
I'm going to be puking. You need to think like, what can I do to make my day a little better then? Like
Do
maybe
you
I'm still going to
feel
throw up, but maybe sucking on a Jolly Rancher helps me feel better for 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, I um, talk my kid through a really hard day of school.
it's a matter of finding productivity through your pain. I
Exactly.
I mean, ultimately when you so you've tried different things. Let's share that because that's important so other listeners can relate. What are the types of diets you threw all around and what kind of maybe medications did they throw your way? And like cannabis wise, that's the one thing that works for you. And maybe what is your best relief when you use it? Like edibles, do they work or do you use different things?
I like to vaporize it. I put it in.
Interesting.
I have a little Pax 3.
Nice.
I put it in my Pax, and I'm good to go from there. But as far as things
Indica or
I've tried,
sativa?
um, it depends on what's going on. Like, am I
There you
treating
go.
my yeah? Like, it depends on what I'm doing, how
Right.
I'm feeling. If I'm really sick, I'm going to go for an indica and hope I sleep.
Exactly. Do you
Um,
want to just mention briefly so we could touch on a future episode? Because I actually spoke. I couldn't believe it. You blow my mind. Dear friend, you blow my mind. The fact that there's a burn law? What is this about? Explain it to the everybody.
there is a no burn law. So what it
What
is
in the
like
hell?
there's no open flame. So I'm not sitting at my house like smoking a bowl. I you vaporize it, you can eat it, right? So you got your edibles, which are really great, by the way, if you have PTSD and you have nightmares like I do.
Hmm.
Eating just like a little bit before bed really, really helps those nightmares a lot.
So is it just concentrates they are allowed to sell and edibles?
No, so the no burn law, I use flour, I put it in my packs, but
Okay.
I can't roll it up into a joint. I can't use a
Really?
lighter. Um,
Oh my goodness.
that's what it is. There's no open
So
flame.
there's no glass?
Well, I mean, there's still head shops,
No burn law. That is the weirdest thing.
but at that point, it would be considered paraphernalia, right? Like, and it would be illegal for me to
Wow.
own, even if I have my medical
This
cannabis card.
goes against counterintuitive to people who have to make medical decisions for themselves if they're using it in a Safe Access Way, that hurts my heart. We're going to have a whole nother podcast if you're okay with that, my friend.
Yeah.
That's incredibly educating because a lot of my listeners are from the old school where you used to be, but in the triangle. They're all around us,
There's
okay?
choices to make there, right? Like,
It's
my,
sad.
uh, and
And
there's
is it
different ways to
expensive?
vaporize it. It is expensive. I'm seeing the prices come down as these dispensaries become more established, and I wonder if we're seeing
Okay,
an offset of startup costs.
got you. Man, I just wish there would be a revolution to this and a conclusion to like
I think we don't
ourselves.
see a conclusion. A conclusion would be wonderful,
I
at
mean,
least one
it's
way or the
farther
other.
than
Like,
it's gotten. You're right.
yeah, and, and we'll see. We'll see what
I'm
happens.
grateful for you, and I'm grateful that you do have access because it
Exactly. It's
breaks
the
my
access that
heart
matters.
when your state was not, and respectfully saying so. Um, a lot could change over the next few years, and you just being the voice of your state and change, I think it's a welcome to the other listeners. I do have a lot of Utah listeners, by the way, so you'll have some new fans in your department. I do want to ask before we forget, is there a organization you may want to shout out potentially? Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I think I lost you. Can you hear me?
Okay, can you hear me
Oh,
now?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Sorry,
It's
it
my,
happens live. Live. It's the Mary Can I Be Blunt.
yeah, so I'm with the Peggy Lillis Foundation. Um,
We'll add
we're
it in the description area, but I just so the listeners, if they're driving and listening.
yeah, there's a bunch of us. We're nationwide. We have um, doctors that work with us, infectious disease professionals, folks from the CDC also work with us. So it's a really, really wonderful network. And if you're someone or you know someone that has been suffering with C. diff, reach out. We have a peer support network. We talk to patients all the time, and we can connect you with someone who maybe doesn't know exactly what you're going through, but kind of knows and can sympathize and help. Um,
And
there's
connect in the right ways.
Yeah, you can go to I think it's peggyfoundation.org is is a great resource for all of this.
I
And
really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with this organization, and hopefully they feel the warmth. I actually followed them this morning, so hopefully they will see that I'm supporting them. Um, Doing good things for obviously across the country, across the world, I'm assuming, if
yeah,
they're
it is
connecting
nationwide.
people.
So while everyone that I know in the foundation, and I don't know everyone by any means, I don't know everyone, but I do know a lot of them, and they're very, very dear to me, very dear friends, and they've been through it. All of us, all of the advocates
Right.
they've either loved someone, and many of them have lost someone to C. diff.
Right.
And many of us have experienced it ourselves and continue to experience it. Um,
It's terrifying.
but as the foundation, we have increased the knowledge of C. diff very effectively. Last year, we reached over 1 million different people. That's cool.
Awesome. See, it's all about just getting the message out and bringing in the right community. And obviously, out of necessity is how everybody's met each other, which that's because people become desperate for answers and an approach that actually works for somebody. Not everybody, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
somebody, you
Not
know?
every approach will work for every person. Every single person has their own different needs, and
Right.
um, yeah, and
And
nothing is
honestly, I
universal in
know,
life.
shout out to a previous podcast. We need to have him on the podcast for your future little chit chat. What were we calling it again? Um, Cakes and
Cannabis and
cannabis.
cake, yeah, something like that.
Oh, yes. This lady right here, cakes and cannabis. It's in big bold letters. Okay, so just imagine fluffy, amazing icing, divine insides, and a lot of love. and we're going to chat flavor and all this other fun stuff. But we need to bring in our previous guest I've had. His name is Jalen 420. He's a cannabis chef, and he shares a lot of things online. And going hand in hand, wouldn't you think, like, when it comes to even just the cannabis side of things and the gut, like, having access to microdose is even something me and you could really chat about if you're open.
Like
Have you
microdose,
done that?
like cannabis
Yes,
or
in an edible form.
yeah. Actually, I do know someone who cannabis in even like the dose of like um a normal dose. So we're talking
Right.
uh we would say 5 milligrams or more in a dose at that point, right?
Yes.
Um, that's too much. It gives them severe anxiety. They're
Yep.
unable to go about their day normally.
Right.
But in a 1 or 2 milligram dose allows them to go about their day without anxiety at all. And so, and yeah, I think that that is a pretty, and that's someone that I know that goes
Right.
through that experience.
Right. And like you
But
said, I've gotten down to 84 pounds. You got down to 94. This shit ain't funny. Nobody wants to literally look in the mirror and be like, I hope I wake up tomorrow.
yeah,
I mean, it's a
well,
reality.
it wasn't quite wake up for me, right? Like I
Uh-huh.
knew that I was going to wake up. The
Right.
question for me was, am I going to go septic?
Yeah.
And
I
that's a
mean,
scary question.
we can talk about a whole other episode and broaden this subject just to speak about personal experiences, because I'm sure this podcast will reawaken some, unfortunately, as we describe PTSD that comes with chronic illness and the mental health side of it. We need to do a whole side conversation on that. But if you're open for it. But
Yeah.
I feel like also maybe a question and answers if some of the listeners come back with something, if you're open for that.
Okay.
um I mean, really, is there something that we need to touch on that we have not brought up yet, my dear friend?
No, I
Because
think the big
I'm
things for
proud
me
of you.
are make sure that you're drinking lots of water, love yourself, um, accept the things you cannot change,
Yes.
and contact your representatives and tell them that CETA should be nationally notifiable and that the Pasteur Act will save lives, lives of people
Yes.
that they love, lives of people that you love.
Let's make this act recognizable in a household conversation, honestly, because it needs to be. That's literally going to affect everyone's household if we don't think on that broad scale.
Well,
I
knowledge is
mean,
power, and you think um, with 500,000 known affected individuals each year,
mm-hmm.
someone you know has likely had C. diff or knows about it.
Or is
But
struggling and doesn't know that they have it.
right, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about having diarrhea. People don't like that. It's not charming, right? It's not.
See, gastroparesis itself
It's
causes that. So then you
exactly
don't know you have it. This is the
right.
hell of it.
Um, well,
We're
so
going
I
to
follow
talk
the
about
3 day
that
rule.
more on the next episode on that one, honey.
If you're concerned, if you're like, I don't know if it's C. diff or my normal things, right? I
Right.
follow the 3 day rule of 3 times or more a day for 3 or more days.
Ha ha. That's life with how bad mine's been. I'm
Then
glad when
you
I
would
don't
take that
throw
as your
up.
baseline.
I
So would
celebrate
add
that.
you would add 3 times more of your baseline. So if you go 3 times a day, but now you're going 6 times a day for
That's
3 or more
normal with my
days.
gastroparesis. It does it all the time. It does the
Well,
fluctuation of hell.
yeah. So that's the thing is you know your body best. This is when I'm saying
Right.
you are your best advocate. You know your body best.
You're
If
right.
6 times is normal for you, but you don't usually go more than 9 times a day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you need at 9 times a day, you should start questioning it and see, is this going for more than 3 days? If you're going 12 times a day, and you've done that for 3 days in a row, you need to go see a doctor. You need to go see a doctor.
See, and with my
With
body, just personally here, nobody, I'm not a doctor. This is just trigger warning, our personal gastroparesis lives. the dark, seedy side of it as a
Yeah.
pun, but um on some real shit. It really is it's a nightmare when you have it, and you pretty much, most people are not educated, and your primaries are not special doctors that are educated unless you're lucky to have like an area that your primary knows this stuff. That's how I got diagnosed. My doctor was a previous, I don't know, he went from being a primary to also being a GI, and he was like, I was at all these research conventions and I saw that it was real. And this is early, what, 2014 when I got diagnosed. But yeah, it was a 7-year wait before I got diagnosed. So it takes a real specialist. And currently in my life, I have a doctor who is um, National Guard, so she sees a lot of things because she's out of the country, so that's positive too. So she's experienced, but you don't always luck out that way, and sometimes you have to almost ask your doctors to please help you and educate themselves, because you as a patient, that's my best advice, have
Yes.
the power to ask them to do that, because
You
they
do,
should
but you
not put
also
it
have
all
to
on your
come.
back.
You can also bring that knowledge with you if you have that knowledge. So if I am going to see a new gastroenterologist and I
That's
know
hard.
I have C. diff, I bring my papers with me.
Oh, that's smart. Hell yeah. Oh, that's so smart. Well said, Minnie.
There's no reason not to. If you know I constantly have to advocate for myself in this area, bring it with you. Write up a document, write out a little script so you're not trying to stumble over your
Or
words.
start a binder with some little sheet protectors, and you
Exactly.
slide that bitch in there, and then you tab it out. And I'm telling you,
And
the
you can
doctors
be
take you
pleasantly
serious.
surprised. You
You're
cannot need
so
that at all.
right. You're so right. Actually, you're ahead of the curve because you do live in a big city and you do deal with doctors who are like, eyes are peeled over half the time. Even if your doctor cares about you, the thing about what I've experienced with a lot of my health problems, not so much anxiety because it's recognizable, I'd say in the last 20 to 30 years, but let's say before that, you were glazed over too. Gastroparesis used to only be a diabetic disorder. It is not now. It is can be lots of contributing factors. So, and it can be misdiagnosed as IBS for so fucking long. So if it's
Yes.
not IBS or gastroparesis and it's C. diff, back to the problems.
Yeah.
If you're antibiotic, let's see, how long have you had it? All those things are factors. I really want you to touch further on the next episode. If you're down, take little notes, pull it out your brain holes.
Yeah, I'm always down to come chat. You just shoot me a list of questions and
I
I can.
will. And we didn't touch on your music choices, so it's happening. I'm gonna get you on a show, girl. I sincerely hope you felt like this is at least a nice warm cheese and toast, or no, cheese and crackers to the whole plate we are going to start sharing, hopefully.
Absolutely. This is great. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's really just quite an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. Well,
I've
you're now broadcasting from basically all over, probably to the moon as well. We need to get on Sirius XM, but I don't have a schedule for that yet. It will happen. But
they keep calling me. I can just talk to them next time they call me to buy their product.
no, it's not that. I have to get on a schedule for them to accept me as a podcast. Everybody else wants me.
I was
Both
just
of the
making a joke because they're harassing me
Oh,
like I'm looking for
it's
my car's
good. You
extended
should get them.
warranty.
I love it. There's some damn good music. Actually, speaking of music, just to touch very briefly to start the seed, okay? We're going to seed it. You put it in the towel and you hope it seeds, right?
All
Okay.
right.
Okay. So, I have two very serious questions
Yeah.
because it's going to totally bring in these listeners, and we're going to hashtag these artists. You ready?
Yeah.
So who is that Lou Band? He's very small, but he's very awesome. And who was the whiskey rye?
Oh, rye whiskey. So rye whiskey is Punch Brothers. Chris Thiele is a world-class mandolin player,
Oh
and Punch
wow,
Brothers is my favorite bluegrass band.
awesome.
My husband introduced them to me, and They have a very special place in my heart. The other Ludo, is that the one you wanted to know about?
Yes, I was impressed. And I went to their Instagram. We are following them. They are tagged in your post, my dear. So I may say a little hello. But
I
they only had 9,000 followers, and I was like, that's damn shame.
I
They're
haven't.
talented.
I I Ludo is one that I always come back to. They used to be
Who's
played on
that?
a local radio station here, X96, for the people in Utah that are
Wait,
listening.
are they a local band?
I do not think so. No, their song
Whoa.
"Love Me Dead" it was a huge hit. They were like a one-hit wonder for "Love Me Dead," but that whole album honestly is gold. It's like a mix between, like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Voltaire, but like
Voltaire,
goth
it sounds
circus
familiar.
music.
I'm a Mars Volta more so, or
Oh, I
Modest Mouse, but
fucking
Mars
love
Volta is
Mars
pretty
Volta.
up there.
Mars
I'm a
Volta is the best.
freaking fan of. Can
They
we have a
are going
mindfuck
on tour this
episode?
year, but their new album is
Wait, there's another
boring.
one? There's another one?
I think that they put out within the last year, but it's
Which one?
boring. They have so many good, like, jam freak out availabilities and options, and you're waiting for it and it never comes.
Yes.
And then they put an
Oh.
acoustic song in it. Like, what?
Oh, they went a little sad on us.
I I am really
That's
annoyed. It's like,
unfortunate. But I do love Mars Volta from like
yes, Mars Volta is
2012.
good noise.
Their
Yeah.
first two albums were insanely good.
They were so okay, yeah.
Oh
And they don't
my
make
God,
any
blow my
sense. Anyway,
mind.
okay. We could talk
Yes.
about Mars Volta all day though.
We're going to. I already have it written down. Music chat's happening. Awaken the minds. We can't play the music, but they'll do their research. We'll talk about lyrics and freak them out. We
Yeah.
will have the moments. Honestly, I would like to elaborate on a Canon Mom chat in the future too, because from mom to mom, I remember when you met me, my son was very young and I have very strong opinions, and you were very much on the same page. And we can talk a lot about not so much politics, but I think educating other moms how to keep things safe, how to teach your children instead of just hiding things. Knowledge is, I mean, really make it medicine, because it is. We're the ones using it for medicine. So I don't know. I welcome you if you'd like to
Yeah.
elaborate that on the future.
Yeah.
So, Minnie, have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here. I will put in the show notes how they can get a hold of this wonderful organization and how they can go contact their representatives for the Pasteur Act. And, thank you for sharing your knowledge. It's not always fun, but we try to make it at least comfortable here. So, um, I'll get a hold of you and we'll schedule it for the next podcast, my dear.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. You have a great day, girl.
Thank
Everybody, thank you. Leave your questions and we will come back to you on another day very soon. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.